Welcome to the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Hey, you guys. You know what time it is. It is time for the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Listen, we had a great show for you this week, and I think you're going to like it. It's called Presidential Party Term Cycle. So the next part is going to be the discussion. So what are you waiting for? Come on, let's go. Let's go listen. Let's go listen. See you guys. Great day, everyone. It is time for the Sonia Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Listen, you all, we have a very interesting show that I want to share with you. I don't know to call it a discussion or just sharing some information or just enlightenment. But first, let me give you the title. It is called Presidential Party Term Cycle. I want to talk to you all about this because we are, in about maybe 2 years, we are gearing up to vote for presidential elections for a new president, or we're going to keep the same president. But I want to share some information with you regarding our presidential party term cycle, which is our subject, our title for this show. But I want to talk to you first. In 2007, at the time, the United States was going through a new election for president. And at the time, Barack Obama was campaigning to be president. And I remember sitting at the office. I was sitting at my desk, and I was excited about we're about to have an African American couple to be president, and how interesting that would be. And I was really thinking, are we really ready for this? And so I decided to pull up the list of the presidents that the United States have had over the years, starting with George Washington in 1789. And as I was going through the list, I discovered something that was really interesting. I discovered the party and the term cycle in which the party, far as the presidential, what I mean by the party, Republican and Democrat, served as a term. And I discovered something. There was a pattern here. It didn't always appear to have a pattern. And because I went all the way back to George Washington in 1789 to see, did this pattern always happen? But I discovered something. During the term with George Washington, although he served 8 years, he did not have a specification whether he served Democrat or Republican. You guys bear with me. This is not going to be a boring show, but I want to show you something and bring you current. But first, I want to show you in the beginning how this all started. But George Washington didn't have a party that he was particularly involved in, Democrat or Republican, or if they did, they don't have it listed, okay? And then the next president of the United States was John Adams in 1797, and they list him as a Federalist. He only served for 4 years. And then we have, in 1801, there was a change of the party, of the representation of parties for the presidents. They began to associate with both. Like Thomas Jefferson was a Democrat and a Republican. That's how they listed him in a party. It was Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, there was James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, and those are the presidents listed as a party as Democrat and Republican, okay? It did not change to a specific party until 1829, where Andrew Jackson served 8 years as a Democrat for president of the United States. His term was 1829 to 1836 as a Democrat. And then Martin Van Buren served 4 years as a Democrat. And then we have in 1841, William Henry Harrison served, and that it changed, it served over to a wing, WHIG. He served 1 year. I don't even think it was 1 year. I don't know what happened to Martin Van Buren as a Democrat, but William Henry Harrison stepped in for a brief time, and then it changed over to John Taylor as a wing in the same year, 1841. So something must have happened, because the term between these two people, Martin Van Buren was a Democrat, but then it changed over to William Henry Harrison in 1841, and then John Taylor in 1841, and he served 2 years, all the way to 1842, and then he did not serve 2 years. He actually served 4 years, 1841 until 1844, okay, as a wing. Now, after John Taylor served 4 years as a wing, then it switched over to James K. Polk, was a Democrat for 4 years, okay? I'm going somewhere with you guys. This is like in the 1800s. So let's go to current. Because at the time, I was sitting at the desk at the office, and I was really excited about this new thing that was happening in our politicians, or the political party, and it was now switching. We having a black couple is campaigning to be president. Of course, we know he did win the election, but I don't want to go to Barack Obama first, because I want to pinpoint and show you the presidential party term cycle, how I discovered something. And when I mean term cycle, I mean a term cycle of 20 years for each party. 20 years for the Democrat, and then 20 years for the Republican. I'm also going to place this link in the description so you can go and see what I'm talking about. But it's easier for me to start with current, not with Barack Obama, but because at the time when I was discovering the 20-year term, Barack Obama has not been elected for president. Only George Bush at the time was the president. That's George Bush Jr., the son, was president of the United States. So let's go back to, because I can't remember how far back where the term cycle began to be 20 years for each party. But I believe it went all the way back to maybe Richard M. Nixon or Lyndon B. Johnson. I can't remember those two, which one it all went back. Because as you know, that John F. Kennedy was killed and he only served for 2 years. So that is the reason why I'm not really sure how the 20-year terms start, far as the 20 year for Republicans and 20 years for Democrat. But let's go back and let me get specific and explain. As we know, after Gerald Ford served as a Republican, let's start with Jimmy Carter. Now, this is where I know for a fact, this is when the Democrats started the beginning of the 20-year cycle, the 20-year term. Jimmy Carter was elected for president of the United States in 1977, and he served 4 years of the 20 cycle, the term cycle of the Democrats. He served 1977 all the way to 1980 for 4 years, okay? So that would be 4 years of the 20 term. Then it switched over to Ronald Reagan, okay? And you guys, I hope I don't confuse you, but if you just, pull up the link and then listen to what I'm saying, you'll understand what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about the 20-year term cycle for each party, okay? Again, President Jimmy Carter served 1977 to 1980 as a Democrat for 4 years. That's the beginning of the cycle for the Democrats. So that would be 4 of 20-year cycle. Then in 1981, Ronald Reagan served. It was the beginning cycle for the Republicans as well. Okay. He served for 8 years as the president. He served 1981 to 1988. So that was 8 years of the 20 for the Republicans, okay? And Jimmy Carter served 4 years, okay, of the 20 for the Democrat. And they both of the beginning cycles for each party. Now, after Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr. served 4 years, 1989 to 1992, okay? So now you have 12 years of the 20 years for the Republican. Then after George Bush, then came Bill Clinton in 1993 to 2000. And of course, we know Bill Clinton served 8 years of the 20, okay? They're both having 12 years of each party. Now, this is where they're having to close out each term. So now we need another 8 years for both parties to close out that cycle of 20, and then it begins to start all over again. So after Bill Clinton, we have George Bush, the son, who served 8 years, okay? He began his presidential in 2001 until 2008, okay? So that finished up the Republicans of 20-year cycles, okay? So now that we know that by the time Barack Obama was elected, the Republicans' term cycle of 20 years was complete, okay? And so now we needed 8 more years to complete the Democrats' party term cycle. And this is when Barack Obama became president of the United States in 2009, all the way up to 2013. So that closed out on both parties, okay, of the 20 cycles. I hope you guys are following me on what I'm talking about, because as I was looking at this, I went above Jimmy Carter, where the Democrats started, okay, of the 4 years. But before that, there was Gerald Ford. This is the reason why it threw me off, because Gerald Ford only served 3 years. You know why he only served 3 years is because Nixon supposed to have been probably serving the 8 years, but of course, you know, Richard M. Nixon in 1969 is when he took the president's seat as a Republican. And there was some criminal things. He was impeached. And so he had to leave office in 1973. He only served 6 years as a Republican. So my understanding is Gerald Ford stepped in to complete the rest of the Republican under his term. So that's the reason why I started out with Jimmy Carter, because it made it more sense. But as I was going through the cycle with Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, it's still an 8-year cycle. So let's look at that. And that began in 1969 and 1976. So that's 4 years. And before that, Lyndon B. Johnson, he served only 6 years. And before Lyndon B. Johnson, before that was John F. Kennedy. Of course, he only served 2 years because he was murdered. But even still, the Democrats had an 8-year term with the two people, Lyndon B. Johnson, and then John F. Kennedy. Okay. And then this is what was happening. I'm sitting at the desk going above that because I wanted to see where did this cycle begin. Before John F. Kennedy, there was Dwight D. Eisenhower, and he was a Republican, and he served 8 years in term. Now, before that, Harry S. Truman, Franklin Roosevelt, they served more than 8 years. So that's when I said the 20-year cycle and the term for each party did not begin until I truly believe it didn't start until Jimmy Carter. Okay, that's the reason why, because there's not a cycle that says these are clumped together as 20-year terms. It did not start until Jimmy Carter, where they started to do 20-year for party term cycles. Okay. So now I know this is the weirdest thing, because I was like, wait a minute, this is the weirdest thing how this is happening. And maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe it's really not true. But this is what I was seeing while I was sitting at the desk, because before that, it's just really sporadic, the different terms like the Democrat and Republican together for the president to serve. And then you had the West Wing, as a presidential party, as what they represented. And so the consistency did not start until Jimmy Carter, and which was really weird, because I was saying, okay, at the time, Barack Obama had not been elected. And I was sitting there sporadically thinking, could this possibly be for real? So I just wanted to share that with you guys today, because it was really interesting how I was seeing this cycle. And then after that, in 2009, Barack Obama was elected as a Democrat, which closed out the 20-year party term cycle. So they were both closed out. So now what happens, that Barack Obama, George Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, and Jimmy Carter was one of those situations where it was 20-year term cycles for both parties, Democrat and Republican. I hope I am not confusing you all. Like I stated, you can go back and look at the reference for yourself and see what I'm talking about. So now we have Barack Obama has been elected, and then we elected Donald Trump, which threw me because I didn't know which party he was about. I think he went in as a Republican, but he only served 4 years as a Republican. But it's going to be interesting. And then, of course, we have our current president is Biden. And so that's 4 years. So they're both parties now. Term cycle is completing 4 years. So it's really going to be interesting when Biden decides to run for president again. Are we going to extend 4 more years so he will have an 8-year cycle? Or is this going to go back to the president for the Republicans? And they are going to have 4 years or maybe an 8-year cycle. It is going to be depending on if Biden decides he wants to run and who we're going to elect. Okay, so I hope I did not confuse you. There's also, I want to talk to you guys about our presidents and I call it the charismatic way of them being the president of the United States, because it's based on what they represented. And let me go and talk to you about that, because let's start with Barack Obama. A lot of people was having so many complaints, about how, he didn't represent this type of race. He didn't represent the black race. He didn't, and I started looking at the complaints, and I started looking at the style in which they were leaders over the United States. And I looked at something, and there's also a pattern here too, because what made me look at the style in which they are leaders over the presidents of the United States made me to look at Donald Trump. And I was having a discussion with people, and a lot of people did not like Donald Trump. They just didn't like him. I'm not giving any views whether I liked him or not. I wanted to see his style. And Donald Trump came from a corporate America type style. Before he became president and before everybody hated him, one of the things that he did, he had this show on television, You're Fired. It was a corporate America type of style. That was what he was doing in commercial real estate. It was, I used to watch him all the time when he's bragging about his Christmas parties to his employees. He was always so ecstatic about they are getting the best, and all of that stuff. I used to just say, what in the world is this? But he did not act any different than the corporate America CEOs and all of that stuff, So I didn't see anything different than what I have been in corporate America for over 30 years. It had a relative type personality and a style that he had that resembled that atmosphere. So I understood. So I started looking at Barack Obama, and I started looking at his way and his style, which was more of community. He was like a social worker type person. That was his person. He was always concerned about the people. And that's how he was when he's president. He was a leader in that type of style. Now, when we got to George Bush, the son, he was a person from Texas. His family owned a lot of oils, land, and, producing oil. He was a Texan. He was a cowboy. And he was always drinking, and it was just his style. And then, of course, when we had the Katrina situation, he was a son of a rich man, and the way he responded and all that, I'm not making excuses the way he responded, but I'm just talking about the style in which he was a leader over the president of the United States, which made me understand his way, the way he is. I've always liked George Bush, and I don't know about nobody else, but I just did. I liked him, and yes, I did vote for him. I voted for him on both terms. I just liked him. And so he responded in the same way of his style of what he represented. Now, when we got to Bill Clinton was an entertainer. He played the saxophone. It wasn't a saxophone, but he was an entertainer. And he responded, and his style was exactly the way I would picture him as a leader of the United States. He was very personal with entertainers. He was very personal with the celebrities. He was very personal with the people. Of course, everybody loved everyone who plays music, who are artists. He just had that charisma that draws you in, and that's where you were. And plus, he was the most smartest person. Bill Clinton was smart. He grew up next door to a black family. They were all poor, So he understood the poor, the middle class, and the rich, and he was an entertainer. So when we got to George Bush Sr., who was a wealthy oil man, as his son, they assimilated the same type of stylish, the same type of charisma in who they represented as a president. Now we got to Ronald Reagan, who was a actor, a celebrity, and that's how he represented as a leader over the United States. Now he was also political and making changes because that's what he wanted to do. Now when we got to Jimmy Carter is from the South. And he represented the same way that he is. Jimmy Carter in Georgia has a lot of land where he produced a lot of produce, and that's what he represented. I wanted to talk to you all about the style of our president, and looking at them in such a way that, oh, this is how they're going to represent as a leader over the United States. Because as I'm going through the way they are, when I do a little research and I read the history about these people, the way their persona over the United States as president, it's not like you're going so far to the left or you're going so far to the right. Based on the history, when you do research on these people, it's usually pretty much how they are going to be leaders in their heart and how they're going to persuade concerns over the American people. And so I just want to just present that to you all today on our show. And again, our title is Presidential Party Term Cycle. And of course, I did give a little information on the style in which they led as a president. So as we go forward in the next 2 years and vote for our president of the United States, I hope that this podcast today will give you, some enlightenment on where we are going and what are we putting in the president seat. Now, their wives make a huge decision on our behalf. Of course, I'm not really sure about a lot of the wives, but I do know George Bush's wife. She was a person who did those cookies. We used to tease about the wife going making homemade cookies and taking it to the kids. Of course, we know Michelle Obama was, she was the coolest first lady. She changed the way we looked at food. My understanding that she had a huge sway in people getting back to the yard, starting their gardens. Even Oprah Winfrey started a garden, and she had the schools to change the way the children were eating. She had Walmart to change their produce and the way they sold their food. So she had a huge significance and swaying as the first lady with Barack Obama, changing the way we looked at food and our healthiness, and what we're buying and what we're purchasing at these stores, and causing the stores as a corporate end to look at what do we need to do to better serve our customers with better healthy food. So I just want you all to know that today in our show, is not something to be controversial. It's just an enlightenment as you go forward, as we change presidents, and as we go and select our new presidents going forward. Like I stated, the terms are 20 cycles, and so this is how I saw this, and maybe it's not some enlightenment but it was an enlightenment to me because I saw a cycle that changed within our political cycle of voting and selecting a president of the United States. But that is all I wanted to share with you for this week. And I hope you enjoyed it. But hey, please go back and look and see what I'm talking about. Again, I am going to place this link in the description of the podcast show so you can go in and look at all the presidents. It is highlighted in blue and red for the presidential party, and it gives the dates and the accuracy of the dates and the names of the presidents all the way back to George Washington. So you can just take a look at it too. And hey, if you find something else within the information, shoot me an email, because I would be happy to know a little bit more information about how we select the presidents of the United States, because it is a very pressing situation right now, and it involves every one of us. 300 billion people in the United States, and it affects us. But listen, this is the end of our show, and I thank you for listening. And look, send me an email and let me know what you think about the show. Okay. Again, this is your girl, Sonya Buchanan, with the Sonya Buchanan Show, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time. Listen, you guys, you have a great day, have a great week, have a good weekend, and have a great month. And until next week, bye, you guys. Today's show is sponsored by Comforting Promises Broadcast, where we inspire one life, one smile at a time.
Did you know by being the best you in just 60 seconds a day can add up to a positive, better you in a total of 365 minutes a year? That's 6 hours exactly. Be the best you, even if it's slowly achieved by seconds. You'll gain more to being a prosperous you. Remember, as you take steps, whether they're small or large, the end results will be surprisingly great. Visit us on comfortingpromises.com, and while you're there, visit our store with the latest products available.
Thank you for joining our podcast today. The podcast was produced and edited by Sonya Buchanan. For more information about the host, you can go to sonyabuchanan.com. For information about Comforting Promises broadcast community, you can go to comfortingpromises.com. Thank you for listening to our broadcast, The Sonya Buchanan Show, where we focus on one life, one smile at a time. Until next time, bye you guys.